I have mopped 1,000 floors in my life, and I will tell you something most people already know but never say out loud. A floor does not care who you are. It is dirty, and then you make it clean, and it doesn't ask your name. I found that honest. I found it restful. After 58 years of living, restful was more than enough. My name is Vera. I was a maid in the Vethrani Imperial Library for 6 years before that night. 6 years of quiet corridors and the smell of old data paper and the low hum of the archive stacks cycling through their nightly index. The Vethrani are a formal people, tall, silver-haired, with eyes the pale gold of old lamp glass, and their library was as formal as everything else about them. High ceilings, long silences, the kind of hush that feels like a standing order. I was not there to be noticed. I was there to keep the floors clean and the lamps trimmed and the reading alcoves free of the soft silver dust that settled every night from the ventilation seams. It was fine work. I was good at it. I had been coming to that library for 6 years, and in 6 years the courtiers who used it in the evenings had looked through me exactly the way you look through a window. Not unkindly, just not seeing. I was part of the room, the way the lamp stands were part of the room. After a while you stop waiting to be noticed, and you start to enjoy the invisibility a little. You hear things. You see things. People say more when they think no one important is listening. On the night I am telling you about, I came in at the third bell as usual with my cart and my mop and the small tin of broth I always brought for my supper. The broth was a habit from home, beef stock, a little salt, nothing special, but on cold corridor nights, it was the one thing I looked forward to. I set it on my cart and started at the far end of the east wing, as I always did, and worked my way through. I nearly missed her entirely. She was in the deepest alcove of the reference wing, the one behind the secondary stacks where the oldest physical volumes were kept under climate seals. Nobody used that alcove in the evenings. It was too far from the main reading room, too cold, too dim. I came around the corner with my mop and nearly knocked into her. She was sitting on the floor, not in a chair, not at the reading table. On the floor, with her back against the lowest shelf, her knees drawn up, her arms around her knees. She was young, far younger than I had expected anyone to be in that corner at that hour, and she was crying. Not loudly. The kind of crying that has been going on for long enough that it's become almost quiet, just a slow leak of something that has nowhere else to go. She was dressed plainly. A gray overrobe, the kind the palace research staff wore. Silver hair, loose down her back. Nothing to mark her out. I stopped. She looked up at me. Her pale gold eyes were wet. She didn't speak. I have been poor enough in my life to know what it looks like when a person has been sitting with something too heavy for too long and simply has no one left to hand it to. I have sat on my own floor on my own bad nights. I knew the look. I did not ask her what was wrong. I did not tell her the alcove was for authorized personnel. I did not excuse myself and back away, which was probably what I should have done and what every sensible voice in my head was suggesting. I parked my cart against the wall, turned it so the lamp faced away and gave us a little shadow, and I sat down on the floor beside her. Not close enough to crowd her, just beside her. She blinked at me. I reached back to my cart and took down the tin of broth. It was still warm from the insulated wrap. I opened it and held it out to her. "It's just beef stock," I said. "Nothing to it, but it's warm." She stared at the tin for a long moment. Then she took it. She held it in both hands the way you hold something when you want the heat more than the thing itself. We sat there for a while. The library hummed around us. I didn't say anything because there wasn't anything useful to say, and I had lived long enough to know the difference between words that help and words that fill silence because you're uncomfortable with it. I'll let the silence be. After a time, she said quietly, "You are not going to ask who I am." "Not my place," I said. "Everyone asks," she said, "even when they think they already know." I didn't have an answer for that, so I didn't offer one. She drank a little of the broth. She looked at the covered shelves across from us for a long moment. "I've been walking these corridors for 9 days," she said, "and no one has sat with me." I thought about that. 9 days. I tried to imagine walking through a place for 9 days and having no one stop. "People are busy," I said, though I was not sure I believed it. "They were not busy," she said. They looked. and they kept walking. She handed the tin back to me. I took it. She folded her hands in her lap and was quiet again. I finished mopping the alcove. It needed it. I was not going to leave a job half done. She watched me work, and I worked, and after a while the watching did not feel uncomfortable. It felt like company, the way sitting in the same room with a person feels like company even when neither of you is talking. When I was done, I packed my cart and told her good night, and I meant it, and I went home. That was the night of the third bell. At dawn the next morning, I was in the service corridor outside the library, getting ready to begin my day shift on the entrance hall when a head steward found me. He was a thin Vethrani man who had never once said good morning to me, and he had the look of a man who was attempting to arrange his face around a thing he didn't quite know how to say. He told me that the Empress requested my presence. I should explain that I did not know it was the Empress. I know that sounds foolish, but she had been wearing a research robe with no seal, and her hair was loose, and she was sitting on a cold floor in the dark end of the reference wing. And in my experience, the very young and the very powerful are both capable of looking completely ordinary when they want to. And she had clearly wanted to. I straightened my apron and followed the steward, and they brought me through 3 corridors I had never cleaned and into a room that was small and warm and full of morning light and smelled faintly of something sweet I couldn't name. She was there. She was standing now, and she was not wearing a research robe, and the seal of the Vethrani imperial house was on her collar, and she was unmistakably the kind of person that rooms arrange themselves around. I understood immediately what I had sat down next to in the dark, and I will admit my heart did something complicated. But her eyes were the same pale gold, and she had the same look as the night before. Not commanding, not cold. Something in her was still open, the way it had been when she was sitting on that floor. "I want to ask you something," she said. "Your Radiance," I said, which was the correct form of address and the only thing I was able to get out. "9 days," she said, "and you're the only one who sat down." I didn't know what to do with that, so I said nothing. "I'm not in the habit," she said carefully, "of keeping people who make me feel like a person in a room and then not asking them to stay." I looked at her. She was young enough to be my daughter. She was the head of an empire. She was standing in the morning light with her hands folded in front of her, asking me something that she had clearly thought about, and there was nothing in her face that felt like an order. She offered me a position, not as a maid, though she was careful to say she had no objection to the work, because the work was honest and she respected honest work. She offered me a position as companion to the private library. My own key, my own hours, a room on the residence floor. I thought about the cold floor of the alcove, about the tin of broth and how she had held it with both hands. "I'll need to bring my own broth," I said. Something in her face shifted then. Not a smile exactly, but the thing that lives just behind one. "I'll have the kitchen stock the alcove shelf," she said. And that is how I came to stay. I still mop the floors sometimes, when the night shift crew misses a patch. The Empress has stopped trying to talk me out of it. She reads while I work, and the library hums, and neither of us says much, and it is more than enough.